Greetings, everyone. I'm Uriah Young, host of the 50, 40, 90 interview series and co-host for Basketball Now and Then. Our guest today is A.M. Pfeffer, co-host of Beyond the Surface on the X-Rated Sports Network, a long-form sports conversation show focused on going beyond headlines, hot takes, and reaction-driven media to explore the deeper forces shaping modern sports. On Beyond the Surface, he helps drive meaningful conversations around organizational culture, accountability, performance, and the evolving relationship between fans and media. Welcome to the show, AM.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, man, I was giving you props before we started recording. You have a great show. Love your team, love your topics, and we're going to get into some hoop stuff. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm a lucky man being on that show. I agree. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of fun on that show, and the quality is amazing, and can't wait for our listeners to check you out. So before we get into hoops, I definitely want to give you a chance to shine and give a little bit of a background in terms of your sports journey. We all fall in love with sports at different points of our lives. So give all of our listeners a little background on how you got into sports.
That's a great question. I like to say my journey is all about time zones. And what I mean by that is I'm covering all of them across the United States. Born in New York, spent 14 years there growing up. And I was there during some of the best years of tri-state area sports for sure, especially the Knicks, right? Like when you talk about NBA, I mean, when Ewing came and then obviously Starks and Mason and on and on. And I used to watch them at SUNY Purchase because I grew up about 5 minutes from there. So I was there watching them practice before I ever fell in love with them as a team. Then I moved out to Denver, Colorado, and that was in 1993. And you're talking about that was right when the Rockies were there, just a couple of years. Yep. Everybody thought Elway was on his way out of town, and all of a sudden, major resurgence. Then he was amazing, and then they won in '98. So there was this great 5-year run out there. The Quebec Nordiques moved and became the Colorado Avalanche, and everybody hated them for a minute, and then won the cup. Right? After a year, they won the. So Denver was this incredible place. I went to college at Indiana University. Shout out to the 16-0 Kirks and Yeti national champions last year. It was amazing. But my last 4 years were Bobby Knight's last 4 years. My 4 years of college there were Bobby Knight's last 4 years. So it was incredible just understanding that scene and getting into college sports at that time. And then I've been in Los Angeles for 25 years where, I mean, come on, between the Dodgers and Lakers, and the little stepbrother Clippers, it never is. And now obviously the Chargers moved up here from San Diego. We have the LA Chargers. The Rams are good again. So I've seen it all, man. And all of that, I think, in all four of those time zones has really shaped and cultivated my love of sports across all leagues. But look, I'm also a business guy. You had mentioned that's the big thing. I went to Indiana University and got a business degree from the Kelley School of Business there. Shout out Mark Cuban, probably our biggest and most well-known alum. Yeah, I'm a fan of sports, but I think as I've matured and grown up in life, I probably take the point of view of the general manager more than the fan.
Okay. Now, were you there when Calbert Cheaney was there?
I was not. I was a couple years after Calbert Cheaney, so no, I just missed him. But great, by the way, great pull.
Hey, a lot of people don't know about Calbert Cheaney, and those Indiana teams. They were always fun to watch. And Denver, it's interesting. I remember watching the Super Bowl multiple times in the '80s, and I was pulling for Denver, even though I'm from the East Coast. Yeah. I wanted to see Elway win. If there was ever a study or an example of why you should not give up as an athlete, John Elway is the man.
You're right. I don't know if you saw his Netflix documentary that came out.
I did.
Right? But right? Because he was a guy who believed in himself, and you saw his journey between baseball or never wanting to go to the Colts, what he did in Denver. Again, they wanted to run him out of town, and he waited it out. Mike Shanahan came back, and Terrell Davis showed up, and how great they were. But I forgot to, speaking of NBA, I forgot to mention the Nuggets at that time. The same year that I got there. 1 year later, you look at their roster, this is the famous, the 8-1 game against the Seattle Supersonics, right? Yep. When they took them down.
Dikembe's holding the ball over his head, smiling.
God, the best of the best. So, that happened there as well. What a great time to be in Denver. And here's the funny thing. Hated every single one of those teams. And I'm glad you pulled for that. But moving there from New York, I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I love my hometown teams, and I had to watch all these great teams up close. But I did respect it, and I did form a love for more of the leagues at that time. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. New York, Indiana, Denver, and then LA. I mean, that's a great connecting dots across the map for a sports fan. So my next question has to do with kind of the landscape of sports and what we do as podcasters and bringing fans, daily dose of their favorite athletes and franchises. It gets a little toxic sometimes. And I think what I appreciate with what you guys do, you guys have a lot of fun, but you guys don't necessarily always go with the hot takes. So my question to you, if you look at the overall landscape of sports, has modern sports media shifted from objective analysis to just flat out outrage? And what has that done to the fan experience?
Well, first of all, yes. The short answer to your question is yes. I think it's happened in all media, right? We went from objective to the Walter Cronkite days to subjective to everybody having an opinion and needing to shout louder than the next guy
Right.
and to be heard, obviously. And it's certainly led to the divisiveness in this country. It's, I'm not blaming media entirely, but it is, a systemic problem. And the media is not helping in that respect. I don't necessarily say that it's a bad thing. I also think that it's led to player empowerment, and I'm all for player empowerment. The way the media has become subjective, if you want to spin a positive on it, has allowed for players to have a louder voice, to have a bigger say in their own journey, and the way leagues are crafted. And you're seeing it, especially in the women's leagues, happening now.
Yeah.
And you saw what just happened in the WNBA. So, not all of it's bad. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, this is terrible," or "This is whatever." I don't care about Stephen A. Smith and the way he yells, but everybody serves a purpose. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't want to paint it all as a pejorative.
It's interesting how player empowerment has become more of a thing. And do have a question related to that coming, but let's stick to the fan experience and the emotional investment that fans all over the world have. Do you think that fans are now more emotionally invested than ever before?
I do. I really do. And a lot of that happens to be the notion of populism. And that's a larger conversation as well. And what I mean by that is like we have really all become accustomed to gravitating towards stories, to gravitating towards our banners, to gravitating towards, the flag and the jersey and what it is. And I think that, yeah, there is, and especially because the idea of how small the world is now and the ability for us, you and I, to get on this particular streaming platform and have this conversation, it's happening everywhere in every facet, high and low. And that
Right.
allows people to realize, oh, I'm not the only insane fanatic here in Argentina. We're everywhere, right? And we're fervent about our teams and our players, and it allows for discourse and it allows for just excitement together, or certainly fighting. Again, for better or for worse. So yeah, I do think that has led to this surge, this massive investment of people being excited about their teams. But again, it still comes back to this populist idea. It's like, well, now I'm part of something, and I'm not just part of something that's a couple hundred people or a couple thousand, millions.
Yeah.
Depending on my team or what I care about. And you feel empowered. You feel very strong when you feel like you got millions of people behind you.
Yeah, I think social media has added to the accessibility of fans connecting with their favorite players. And obviously, all the different networks. When we were growing up, it was like ESPN and that was it. Your
Right.
local news, you would wait till 11 o'clock at night to watch the highlights at 11:15, or you wait till the next morning to look at the box scores. Now, like box scores, you can check it as you watch the game, and you can bet on games, right? Which is an interesting
Well,
dynamic.
that
Sports
brings
betting.
up a much larger conversation. But yes,
Yeah,
depending on the state
yeah,
that you live in, or even if you don't, because obviously there are so many ways around it with Polymarket. You don't just need FanDuel or DraftKings. There's all these
right.
different variations of how people are betting now. But yes, that has really really raised the interest and the excitement of again, for better or for worse, in the sports, no doubt.
You mentioned player empowerment. So let's go back to that topic because I find it very interesting what has been happening just in the past 3 to 5 years. In your opinion, how has athlete branding changed the power dynamic between players, teams, and leagues?
Well, in my opinion, it's allowed for the leagues to push back more than anything. And I use the NBA as probably the biggest example because you look at what the CBA has been able to accomplish the last one in terms of the apron
Hmm.
and taking away the super teams or not wanting players necessarily to dictate exactly where they go or how this is done. You look at what is going on with Giannis Antetokounmpo up in Milwaukee. This is a perfect example. Or how when you think about Memphis,
Mm.
Ja Morant is basically isolated. 2 years ago, he was easily going to get traded. Mikal Bridges was 5 first-round picks to the Knicks right before the last CBA. It's insane, absurd
Yeah.
that's what he got traded for, and even he wasn't necessarily clamoring for it. But Anthony Davis wanted his way off New Orleans, and he found his way onto the Lakers. But what ultimately happened to the tail end of his career? He's quickly in uh, Dallas for a short period of time, and then the barren wasteland of the Wizards. And he's got to spin it, and his PR team's got to spin it like this is a good thing. It's the same thing for Trae Young out of Atlanta, and these two guys together. This is going to be great, and probably not, you know. But like, but there has been pushback, and I think that that's what's happened with player empowerment. It's like, hey, the leagues and the owners are really always going to find a way to say, yeah, the players aren't empowered exactly as they think that they are, but the voice is there. And that's important. The understanding of collaboration and voice. And at some point, there's a tipping point where there's enough money to go around. And again, I think you really saw that in the WNBA. What was so interesting about that fighting, right? And the notion of what was happening, and Kathy Engelbert, who really is again just an extension of Adam Silver. I don't think a lot of people understand that the NBA really owns half the WNBA, and they're never going to let it fail. That
Right.
when it looks like at the end of the day, this was this massive win for the players, and all that they got after this. The reality was, I think that this was always going to be the case. This is the play. Like they want to make it good for the players. This was
Yeah.
never about trying to take anything away from it. And I feel the same way about now. What goes on in the NBA, the NFL, all of it. Even with contracts in the NFL that are not always guaranteed. There is a notion of trying, I think, to make it better, but there's an understanding that the owners are always still just billionaires, and at the end of the day, they're going to do everything they can to bend it their way because the casino always wins. And yeah, player empowerment's there, but you can't just raise your hand and say, "Well, now I just want to play for this team. Now I just want to play for this team." Look what's going on in college football. Look what's going on in college
Yeah.
basketball right now. Right? I
Yeah.
mean,
That.
as soon 30 minutes after the NCAA tournament was over, the
Right.
portal opened, and
Wow.
over half the players were like, "I'm going to play somewhere else next year."
That is astounding.
Yeah.
Really astounding. And a lot of the young fans today don't realize that this has kind of been going on since the 70s. If you look at what Dr. J did with the New York Nets, if you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, he had a chance to go to the Nets. George Mikan fumbled the opportunity, he ended up going to Milwaukee. Even Magic Johnson, when he was disgruntled in the early 80s, he demanded a trade. Charles
Yeah.
Barkley forced his way out of Philly. Player empowerment in different shapes and forms has
It's
been
nothing
there the whole time.
but the difference was back then is those guys were seen as the villains. The players were seen as the villains, and there was this notion, right,
Yeah.
that everybody was kind of on the side of the team or the owners. Well, that's
Right.
obviously flipped too.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that happened with player empowerment is everybody, uh, the narrative has flipped
Yeah.
ultimately for the players, but it flips all the time, and it just depends how the players handle themselves and ultimately what they do. I mean, again, it's just a tipping point of how much they're being paid or what they're ultimately agreeing to as well,
Yeah.
which is what makes sports amazing and which makes
Yeah.
the conversation incredible as well. So we can have shows like this.
I kind of wish we could have more owners like Mark Cuban. And for me, it was Pat Croce in Philly. Like what he did with the Sixers, he brought that passion. He brought his knowledge and obviously brought his checkbook. And he was able to inject passion and enthusiasm back into the city of Philadelphia. We don't have a lot of those owners anymore. Can you think of any owners that are really involved with the teams, basketball or football?
No, I really can't. It's a great point. I think Matt Ishbia, and he's got a lot of warts on him, obviously, having
Right.
just gotten into the league and what he's doing down with the Suns. I mean, I think Joe Tsai cares. I think a lot of these guys do care, but they care in a very different way.
Right.
And I don't love it. Look, Magic Johnson, major ownership interest in the
Mm,
Dodgers and what's been done, and now ultimately down with the Redskins as well. So again, I don't want to take away from everybody and think that they don't care, but we have unfortunately really just painted ourselves in a corner that only billionaires can own sports leagues in some capacity. And I think that there's this notion, sadly, from a lot of people, that there are so many billionaires in the world now, and there's plenty to go around. And that's just not true. There's not even 3,000 billionaires on the planet. Okay.
hmm.
And certainly less than the United States of ultimately who's going to own a team. You know what 3,000 divided by 8 billion people is? I'll let somebody do the math on their calculator as to who really owns these teams. So, but how many, to become a billionaire, I mean, you're often thinking in terms of numbers in ones and zeros
Right.
more than you're thinking about the players or what you care about. So yeah, I mean, there are anomalistic owners out there, but yeah, it's a great question you're asking, Uriah. I can't think that not off the top of my head. Oh wow, this is an impassioned. I mean, Steve Ballmer is an impassioned guy, but look how much
There's a good
trouble.
example.
Yeah,
There's a good
but look how
example.
much trouble he's in. I mean, you can
Mm,
think about that being impassioned, but all of a sudden it's like, hey man, were you doing the right thing with Kawhi? Was there something funny going on behind the scenes in the way you did what you did? And that's never a good thing either.
yeah, investing in a tree company is a very unconventional business approach, but I
Very.
digress. You mentioned storytelling a few minutes ago. I want to talk about storytelling because you do such a great job on your show, painting pictures of what the players are dealing with, how the fans connect. So what parallels, in your opinion, exist between storytelling and entertainment and narrative building within sports media?
See, that's a great question. I love that. Well, let's talk about something that's gone on with sports media. We're gonna talk about that first.
Right.
And sports media is really at this point one of the last bad. Well, I want to answer this correctly for you. So when you say sports media, are you talking about guys like you and me who are talking about what's necessary, or are you talking about like a media outlet that is ultimately showing a league or showing a game?
I would say the first part of what
Okay,
you said.
so
Yeah.
guys like us, so
Yeah.
let's really break this down then for a second. In terms of the narrative that we're ultimately creating, and we're always trying to get information as the media because some of us want the hot take or to be first to it because that's
Right.
how we make our living, or we're the more reflective kind and we think about it after the fact, right? And that's to me the bigger part of the picture, and that's the story that's created, and the people who are thinking about it after, because the cycle goes on and on and on, and as fast as the news cycle goes, you wake up every day and there's always something to talk about, which is the beauty of sports,
Always.
right? and
Always.
and it is our and you have a good 24 to 48 hours depending on your show, depending on your audience, whatever it is, to craft your narrative. Again, there is the Sharanya, I'm saying his name wrong, forgive me, or you know who gets it out there, or Adam Schefter is like, I'm the guy who gets it now, and like you're known for that. I mean, you're living with your phone in your hand and you're up 24/7, and there are those people, and that's fine for them, and they're Twitter beasts and all of that. But like the rest of us kind of get a moment to step back and then help cultivate and craft the narrative over a 6, 8, 24-hour period. Um, and again, depending on your audience, depending on sadly, there are politics that seep into this. You're going to be able to help craft the storyline and how you feel about the owners, how you feel about the players, how you feel about the league, how you feel even
Mm,
about the game after the fact. I mean, think about how many people to really answer your question. Think about how many people are like, I wonder how I feel about this. Maybe I should get on the internet and figure out how I feel.
mm.
Or I should listen to this show because they're actually going to tell me how I really feel about it.
Yeah, the race to be first and get that first hot take is kind of what kind of drives the competitive nature of what we do. But at the same time, I think you have to reserve, as you know, if you're really a super fan, it's like, who am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to, a 19-year-old kid who doesn't really know as much or is just taking the first bit of information from Shams or Schefter? Or do they do the research? Do they really have enough context to put that hot
Mhm.
take out there? Which is, I like to think that what you do and what we do, we try to be responsible as we can with the information we give out. You mentioned earlier that you got your degree, business degree from Indiana, correct?
Yes.
This question has to do with a little bit more of an overarching theme with leadership and human behavior. So, in your opinion, why does sports, any sport, baseball, hockey, basketball. Why does sports remain one of the best real-world laboratories for understanding leadership and human behavior?
Oh, that's a great question because I think in every sport that you mentioned and everything that we do, you have to have a hierarchy of coaching, right? There's a clear, definitive line between the players, between the assistants, and between ultimately the head leadership and then really ownership, right? Whether
Right.
that is even at the collegiate level, the institution, or ultimately in the professional leagues, the actual owner. And especially in the professional leagues, I mean, the fish always rots from the head. I am a New York Jets fan. We are 15 years
Mm,
deficient from the playoffs, and I'm the first to admit or I'm the first to happily shout from the mountaintop, "Woody Johnson, you suck." And that's the truth. And I could give you 100 reasons why, but that's really what it stems from, and that's really what you're closing in on because sports allow for clear, definitive hierarchy. It's almost militaristic
it
in
is.
how it's done, and obviously you see some militaries better than other, might better than others, certainly, and credo better than other. But that's really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, there are definitive roles for assistants and for the head coaches, but the fish always rots from the head, and you got to have a real clear vision of who that top leader is. And especially the coaches. And, if you're talking about college football, talking about Nick Saban and like their vision and how they do something,
Mm,
really what it is to care about at the people level. And that's what
yeah.
the good coaches do. Forget the owners. The coaches really understand more than anything else. Dawn Staley gets that, right? It's why
Yep.
she's so good at what she does now. You just it really starts with the people, and you care about the kids, you care about your players, because for the most part, either you have collegiate athletes who are barely young men and women just yet, or you have professional athletes who are going to be pretty much done with their professional careers, most of them by the time they're 30. And prior to being 30, you're still a kid. Let's be honest.
Yeah, leadership is everything. And on our show, we compare NBA stars from different eras. There's always a common thread between player comparisons. We do the research, and the names that pop up in almost every episode or every other episode. I mean, John Thompson, Pat Riley.
Yeah.
These are guys that, if you don't realize, if you're a young person, they played basketball in the
Oh yeah.
NBA.
Oh yeah.
And they took that experience, they took it to the college level or the pro level, and they implemented it in a way to help their players get to the next level and along the way acquire good habits or just what it takes to be a competitive athlete slash just a good person. John Thompson he's been mentioned by so many players and not just guys that went to Georgetown. And this is the perfect time to segue. Let's get to the NBA. You mentioned Jets. That just scared me. So I just want to get away from
Just so we don't
no
have to go down
offense.
that path.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
it.
In the NBA, which teams this season, AM, have you been pleasantly surprised by the most? Give me one Eastern Conference team and give me a Western Conference team.
Can I give you two in the East?
Yeah, give me two.
Okay. Well, first of all, the Boston Celtics. Even as a Knicks fan growing up as I am pleasantly surprised, but I'm not totally shocked. Joe Mazzulla, to me, is the second best coach in the
Oh,
NBA.
he's
Okay.
good.
And he's been phenomenal. And he figured out what it was going to take to turn his team into a three-ball team without Jason Tatum while waiting for Tatum to come back. And I think he knew that somehow Tatum was going to be back by the end of the year. He also made a trade in the middle of the year, which, again, we'll see how it ultimately pans out in the postseason. But he said, hey, I got a real six-man of the year candidate in Anfernee Simons, and I'm willing to part with him to get
Mm,
Vucevic. And we'll ultimately see how that pans out. But I still think it was the smart move, especially built for the postseason and what they needed in terms of size at the right time during the games. But I mean, come on, how can you not be pleasantly surprised with a team that was expected to be a bottom three, bottom four, especially when the season started?
right.
And then, look, I think the easy answer after that is Charlotte, but I'm going to veer a little bit and say Atlanta. I am, oh my God, am
Okay.
I pleasantly surprised with Atlanta. Okay.
Hmm.
I am so happy. I'm not a Trae Young guy. I'm so happy they pivoted and moved off of him and finally made the decision not to commit the money because most of the teams make the mistake, and they do. They
Hmm.
traded him the right way to Washington. And here was the brilliant thing CJ McCollum, who was the centerpiece of that trade, was really a salary dump. But are you kidding me? He's been a phenomenal
Yep.
contributor since getting on that. They pried Kaminga out of Golden State at the right time, right?
Yeah, they did.
Corey
Yeah.
Kispert was part of the trade with Colin, and they understood what he was going to do down there, and they realized Zach Shea is not quite ready yet. And we need Kispert behind. So like they've done an amazing job. They've done an amazing job on Nikhil Walker Alexander, turning him into a real player.
Yeah.
They're getting a lot more out of Dyson Daniels lately, especially on the offensive end. And come on, Jalen Johnson, this guy, he's an absolute stud, superstar, amazing player. More than any of the team. That to me out of the East. And again, I needed to say what I needed to say about Boston, but Atlanta's my answer.
Okay. So you got Hawks and Celtics. What about the Western Conference?
Yeah,
Pleasant
I mean,
surprise.
I think an easy answer is San Antonio. And it's, I don't want to just follow in the footsteps of everybody else, but like, come on with, like this team is there already. They really are a top 2, top 3 team in the West. This is a team that at the beginning of the season, if you looked at the over-unders, were somewhere around 41, 42. We're expected to fight for a
Mm-hmm.
play-in game, let alone a playoff spot. And they have easily cemented themselves as right there in the 2 slot. And I got to tell you, I mean, as good as Wemby's been, and he has been that good, as we know, as advertised beyond times 1,000, a lot of credit to everyone else in that team, and especially all the way up to the coach and the front office. And you talk about leadership, you talk about what Greg Popovich instilled in that team, and the history and the lineage that he left, and the
Yeah.
legacy that he left. It's all still there. It's incredible. They are like, I mean, they're the best thing about basketball. So that's why I'm pleasantly surprised with them.
Yeah. I love what San Antonio's doing. Our season 3 launch episode was a comparison of Wilt Chamberlain and Victor Wembanyama. 2 players from different eras, obviously, who the league had no idea what to do with either of them. And Wemby, the difference between him and Wilt, it's slowly becoming apparent, is that Wemby wants to dominate with a Michael Jordan type of GOAT mentality, where Wilt Chamberlain, in that episode we did the research, he would actually hold back. He would hold back in certain games because he didn't want to seem like a bad guy. I guess the final series, I don't know if it was against the Knicks or the Celtics, but Wilt, is prolific as his numbers were, he did not have that mentality like a Wemby. But we're going from positive. Let's go to the negative.
Yeah.
Give me your 2 disappointing teams from either conference.
Look, we're going to see where they ultimately end up in the East, but the Orlando Magic to me have been a disappointment. Okay, because I think that
Okay.
they are constructed as a top 3 team. Franz Wagner is that good, in my opinion. I really believe in what he does. Some nights I'm wondering, is he better than Paolo on the team? And is he really their alpha and their superstar? And I think mostly my answer is yes. But bringing Desmond Bane in as they had, and if you have a healthy Jalen Suggs, and even in the middle of the, like Wendell Carter Jr., and Tristan da Silva and the guys, and what they ultimately offer to the team, like they're 8 or 9 deep. They were such a good team, defensive team, especially true team defense the past couple of years, and that was really their specialty, and they just went away from that and haven't done a good job. And there's been a lot of infighting, and they're not getting coached the way they probably should be. And this is a team I think that should be a top 3 team, possibly in the 4 seed, who's fighting to potentially be a 5 or 6 seed, but more than likely will end up as a play-in competitor. And to me, that's a huge disappointment.
Yeah, they took Cleveland to a Game 7 2 seasons ago. So I was bullish on that team. What about the West Conference?
That's a great question. The West Coast to me is so interesting because it's kind of chalky.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you expected it to be. I mean, the disappointment is how bad these teams are tanking. That's the disappointment. Or as I joked about on the show the other day, I was in the fetal position after Reeves went down. Like, I was already crying when Luka went down, right?
Yeah.
So like the level of disappointment is just that we're losing this incredible ascension of the Lakers and what Redick has turned them into. And now, like, do we even get to see them in the postseason in the variation that he was turning them into over the last 6 weeks, right? And oh my God, like I could, like, first Luka, but he's gonna come back. He's gonna make it back for that first round of the playoffs, and even an 80% Luka's okay. But when Reeves ran down, I was joking. I put my thumb in my mouth and I got in the fetal position because it was like this is so disappointing. As a fan of basketball, I'm
Yeah.
disappointed in that respect. But look, everybody else, or I could just say that I'm disappointed in how everybody's handling the tankathon, as anybody wants to call them. And the bottom five teams are a joke. They're not even competitive. They're not putting out any product.
How do you resolve that? How do you stop teams from tanking? Do you have a
We
theory?
talk about that a lot on the show. We're really divided on how to do it. I am on the side of incentivization. I do not like the penalization of it all. I mean, everything is like take away draft picks and charge them more and fine everybody and kick them out of this and it's like, yeah, I mean, to a point, you got to have something that you're hanging over your head, but like that only works so much when you're taking away the iPad from the 4-year-old. Like
Yeah.
you've got to incentivize in some way that as the last 20 games of the year come down, that it's like you got to keep winning and you got to keep putting product on the floor, and that's your best chance to get a top 3 pick. That's where I would go with that. I want to lean in that direction. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to. I want to see what Silver does. I think the good news is this is really high on the priority for the NBA. It's probably 1 or 2 in their pecking order to handle in the offseason, and at this point you have to. But, it's become a stain on the league for sure.
Who's your MVP?
SGA. SGA is my MVP. There are obviously 4 transcendent players in the league now between Luka, Wemby, Jokic, and SGA, right? And then the argument really starts on who you want to make the 5th and who's your first team All NBA, blah blah blah, and that's fine. For a long time, I actually had Jokic because his numbers are just beyond. They're really beyond and better than even the years that he won MVP. But the league has gone a different way. Scoring's gone a different way. Things have changed a different way. I want to give Wemby all his due and his flowers and everything he deserves. I mean, he's clearly the defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
But there are a couple times that he missed a few games, and even in the games that he played that he didn't show up, that I'm like, SGA. It's almost blasphemous to say this, but he's at this point Kobe Jordan level in what he does, and he gets to the free throw line. He closes out games when he needs to. Sometimes he doesn't even have to play the fourth quarter. He's a tone setter for the defense, but when he plays the fourth quarter, oh my goodness! Besides maybe Cade over half the season on a run of what he did in the last 5 or 8 minutes of a game, he gets it done, man. And he's got that mentality, and he is a full-time killer. We talk about full-time killers and part-time killers on the show. He's a full-time killer. SGA deserves it. Again, you can make the argument with me about Wemby, certainly about Jokic and what he's done recently, or where Luka
Yeah.
was going before he got hurt. SGA is my MVP.
Yeah, SGA, we compared him in season 1, compared him to Penny Hardaway, and I did not know that SGA was cut from his high school team, kind of in the same thread of Michael Jordan. And look, man, Charlotte, what are they thinking? They drafted him. Then he went to the Clippers. Then the Clippers had a chance to let him shine. And I think Doc wanted to keep him, but was it Kawhi that said, let's get Paul George? I forget how they
I
went
mean,
there.
everybody ultimately puts it on Kawhi to say, you got to get me a running mate, and I want that to be Paul.
Yeah.
You give Oklahoma City whatever you want. And Sam Presti, the GOAT of GMs, got it done yet again. Look, nobody can expect SGA to turn out the way that he did, but they should have known, at least in the Clippers organization, like he's ascending. He's going to be some of a, and not maybe MVP level, maybe not even total All NBA, but he was way more than just a rotation guy. He had a special
Way
talent.
more.
He had
Way
special
more.
abilities in it, and it seems ridiculous now to think that they let him off that team.
So let's talk NBA Finals. Who are you going with from the West, and who are you going with from the East?
I'm gonna go with OKC out of the West. Okay, I've never come off them this year, and I'm not going to now. I'm happy to run down the rest of the teams below them, all the way down to Houston. I think there's 4 other teams who probably have a chance below them. Denver, by the way, whose offensive output now that Gordon's back has been exceptional, and they absolutely have every bit of a chance. And Jokic is dialed in, obviously. Forget it. San Antonio, I mean, who knows? I mean, they'll put you in a death grip at any given night.
Yeah.
And it's going to be exciting, but OKC in the number 1 seed has a chance to watch everybody else beat up on each other. And really, especially if like Denver and San Antonio have to go at it before they even reach OKC. OKC has the benefit of all 4 play-in teams dare I say, sucking. Whoever ends up in that 7th or 8th seed compared to um, what's going on in the East, obviously. I mean, look with the jockeying of position. I don't care who ends up there, right? Whether that's Philly or Orlando or even Miami or certainly Charlotte, right?
Yeah.
Or Toronto. You don't want to play any of these teams out of the Atlanta. You don't like whoever it is that ultimately falls there and has to fist fight. If you're the top 1 or 2 seeds, if you're Detroit or Boston, I think you got to be looking at down at the barrel and be like, I'm a little nervous. You're not feeling that way if you're OKC or even whoever, or San Antonio for who's coming out of the West. But San Antonio has got to play Denver first before they play Oklahoma City, right?
Right.
Through those teams. And that to me is such a huge advantage for Oklahoma City. So I'm still gonna say that they're gonna win. And I understand San Antonio has had a better a better
They got
record.
their number.
They got their number. But that's regular season. How many times have we seen it in the regular season and then you get to the postseason and it's
Okay.
It's a different thought. Now, who comes out of the East? Oh my God!
The Knicks.
Every day I have a different answer.
It's your Knicks, right? You go with
You know what?
your team?
I'm going to say something, and I'm going to do it for our founder, Dr. Phil McDonald, Dr. X, who is a massive Knicks fan.
Right.
As am I, though he calls me a part-time Knicks fan, and he's not wrong anymore. It's the Knicks. The Knicks are going to come out. I'm telling you, because Detroit or Boston is going to get hurt. And even though the Knicks have the Boston's number in the regular season this year, I'm not going to pretend that that's going to mean anything in the playoffs. Like I said, I can't say that about San Antonio and Oklahoma City and not feel that way about the East. But there's something going on with the Knicks. There's something going on that, I feel like they're laying low. It's all going to come down to Mikal Bridges. Everybody thinks that. I have not agreed all year. He cannot be their second best player. I do not want him to be their second best player.
No.
If Mikal Bridges shows up, if he gets out of that funk and becomes the player who was traded for 5 picks, okay? You got enough with OG and Hart and the bench, and especially the way Mike Brown makes adjustments in the late 3rd and 4th quarters, the Knicks could do it. And I mean, Brunson, he's a full-time killer too. Full-time killer. He's got his deficiencies. He can't defend like everybody else. And I understand that he's not as good as some of the other point guards out there. But something, I mean, I want to feel like when playoff time comes around, they understand what it's going to take. And again, if they end up in the 3 seed and Toronto ends up with the 6 seed, I'm taking the Knicks.
Fair enough. All right, last question.
Yeah.
And really curious to see what you think about this question.
Okay.
If you could improve one thing about the NBA, what would it be and why?
That's a great question. Great question. This is going to sound a little strange, but I want to slow the pace down. I would improve the NBA by slowing the pace down 12 to 15%. Why am I saying that? I really believe this is the major cause of the injuries. And we're seeing ridiculous rash of injuries these last 35 years. We have conversations about load management and what's happened. We're seeing blown Achilles. The truth of the matter is, I mean, these are supreme athletes, even better than they were years ago. And why are they getting hurt? Is because of the pace of the game. It's too fast. They're running too much. Even LeBron in the last 5-6 years understood as he aged. He's learned to space the floor and keep it in the tank as necessary. The other guys don't have the capacity like he does, and they're all not built 6'8", 270. So it's not a fair comparison, but that's why you see a guy like he's like the one anomaly who has longevity. Everybody else, or to see Tyrese go down, to see Tatum go down, to see some of the other injury. I mean, it's just insane. Or Luka with the hamstring. The pace is too much. It's too fast. And as cool as it is to see scores of 147 to 136 now, on certain nights, it's hurting the game. The league's going to be just fine if we're back at 125 to 116. Slow the game down. I don't want to see injuries. It's really a bigger issue than anything else.
That's an interesting response because a lot of the retired players will quote hate on what the younger players say about playing in the new NBA. To the young guys' credit, if you look at the 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of it was inside-outside game. You dumped the ball down. It was more half-court central unless you were like Denver or, one of those, Phoenix Suns teams. But yeah, nowadays it's just, man, everyone's moving. Everyone's trying to come off screens and fast breaks. And there's more threes, but that's a good point that you make. Hey, look, It was great having you on, chopping it up, talking basketball. Please give all of our followers a social media blast. Where can they find you?
No, I appreciate that. So personally, I'm not a huge social media guy as AM Pfeffer, but I'm going to say to everybody watching and listening, first and foremost, subscribe on Instagram to the X-Rated Sports Network, at X-Rated Sports Network. We have a huge following on Instagram for sure, but our show, Beyond the Surface, is on YouTube. We are live every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we put on 2.5 to 3 hour shows, and we cover all sports, but 90% NBA for sure. If you're a hoop head, we are your show to listen to what's going on. And thank you very much for mentioning everybody who's on our show. I think we got a great team in what we do and everybody that's on there and what we're talking about. But again, Beyond the Surface on YouTube, on the X-Rated Sports Network. And again, that's XRAYTED is where you could find us. And Mondays and Thursdays live at 2 p.m.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Can't wait to check you guys out live. And that wraps up another 50, 40, 90 interview. You can expect another comparison episode this Sunday. Don't forget to follow, rate, and subscribe to Basketball Now and Then. Thank you for listening, everyone. Again, thank you, AM Pfeffer, for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll see you next time.